Launch One with Mason Springer. I'm Mason Springer. Today, we're joined by Nick Ventura. Nick is an awesome guy. I've known him for several years now. We've seen each other across the country. Nick, you're a very interesting dude. You've got tons of stuff going on, especially during hunting season. How you been, Nick?
Good, man. I saw you shot a good buck. I wish I had my Ohio tag filled, but things are good, man. It's cool to see you have a platform like this because I've always been equally intrigued with everything you've got going on. It's been cool to watch this from afar and be one of the early guests on your podcast. So I'm
Yeah,
excited.
that's a good point. We both kind of have platforms, but yours is totally different than mine. Mine's all Facebook, Instagram, and you've got the TV shows you've done, and that's really cool. So you started out with Become One. Was that your first show?
Yes and no. So the first show that I kind of hosted was actually called The Life. And that ran for 3 seasons on Sportsman, and then we shifted to Become One. And that was right around the time of, I think that was when Donald Trump was first getting elected. There were some things happening, people in our industry getting in trouble, especially on the TV side of things. I won't mention names, but if you do research, you could probably figure it out. So that's when we kind of shifted to more of this Become One as far as like inclusion of everybody, and we as hunters are one, and then
Yeah.
as of recently I kind of ventured out on my own a little bit, and I think this July, I guess, we started airing our first episodes for Art of Wild, which is just me. So I feel like I'm kind of home now, if you will, as far as content and kind of the storylines I want to tell. It's always been for me about just telling a cinematic story, whether that's deer hunting, elk hunting, duck hunting, bow, gun. So it's allowed me to do that and, hopefully kind of spend more time with the family and kind of ground myself a little bit and, not travel as much in
Yeah.
the next coming years.
So Art of Wild, that aired this July. Was it 10 episodes?
Yeah, it's going to be 10 episodes. I still haven't released them all yet. I'd say we're about 5 or 6 through. So, and, it's 10 episodes is a lot. It doesn't seem like a lot when you're doing YouTube, 22 minutes of content. So, and I'm not discrediting YouTube by any means. It's just, like I killed a doe and my son killed a doe with his crossbow, his first one. He's 4 years old and I still don't think I have enough for an episode, but I'll do YouTube and I'll launch that, each of those hunts probably together, which is cool because I think YouTube's great for, the content that's out there right now, and it's easy because you get good engagement with people. Like the TV side, it just goes through the network to all these different people, and then it gets back to me. Like I'm lucky to hear something from a viewer, and usually if I do, it's because they think I did something illegal or they don't like a shot I made. It's never, people don't go through all those channels just to be like, I loved your episode. It's usually like just crazy stuff. So that's where I think YouTube is good.
Back up here. So you said, did you say your son shot a buck or a doe?
Yeah, my oldest, he is 4, shot his first doe.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
we were
pretty awesome.
We've been practicing all year, and he's first started shooting the crossbow. That's why I love Ohio, because you can get the apprentice license and you can start hunting, and I think it's so important for us as adults and fathers and mothers to introduce our kids as young as we can, because once you get to, I was born and raised in New York. I didn't shoot my first deer till I was 14, and that was the legal age you could start bow hunting. You could shoot one with a bow at 14, and then at 16 you could hunt big game with a gun. And I was telling somebody the other day, I said, by the time you're that age, especially now, you're in the video games, possibly a bad friend group. Like the outdoors is such a good gateway for all these things. So
absolutely,
we're absolutely blessed that those programs in different states allow us to take our kids out at that age, because he's already got the deer back. He's already been eating it and telling all his friends, like he's like, oh, my deer tastes so good. He's getting him snack sticks and stuff. So
that's amazing. Wow,
super cool.
4 years old. That might be the youngest I've ever heard of someone shooting a deer, but that's
it's it's not like he was toted the crossbow out there. I was very very managed. Like we had so we had I have a phone that mounts to the scope so I can watch it with him, because what was happening is back in the day, you'd see a lot of guys in youth season, they would let their kids look through the scope, and it's like my biggest fear was not him missing, it was him making an unethical shot, so And then, oddly enough, he did shoot one the night before, and I still to this day don't know what happened. He shot it right behind the shoulder. We looked at the footage. We're like, yeah, dead deer. It was getting late, so we went back the next morning, looked, and the deer was still alive. And he wasn't with me, thank goodness. But I was like, this is the worst case scenario. Is that he's out there with me and he doesn't understand it. But his first reaction was, he goes, "Did I miss?" Because the doe ran off, and I was like, "No, she heel kicked everything. Like, it looked good." And looked at the footage. I mean, I'm talking maybe top of heart, bottom lungs. Like, you couldn't pick, maybe a little low, a little high. I'll show you the photo some point when I see it, but it was, and so I still don't know what happened, if it was a broadhead that didn't open, if it was, I think crossbows are tricky because they're so fast, so it's like, it's a whole different technology with broadheads.
Yeah.
And there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down there, but, so I was like, "Do you want to go again?" The next day we went out and he shot and quartering away and hit the offside shoulder, and he celebrated and he was just so relieved. But so if you watch the footage, it's funny because I'm there holding the crossbow talking to him, and he always has his hand up by the trigger. We've talked about this, and I'll tell him, "You can be close to trigger." I'll say, "Don't pull it yet," and I had the safety of course on, and then when he's ready, I'll say, "All right, safety's off," and he'll be okay now, and he's like looking up at the screen, like, holding it. It's just because it doesn't fit them. They're not made for that. And then I'm like, "Yeah, when you're ready, squeeze slow." And he's watching the screen. And so it was a lot of work. And a 4-year-old in the blind is not easy. But, I shot a deer when he was 3 years old with me in the blind, and he was with me when he was 2 years old. So he understands it. My biggest goal in life is to have all three of my boys hunting. I say my biggest goal. It's not my biggest goal, but that, as far as outdoors go, like, that would make me happy if I could share the outdoors with each of them.
Yeah.
So
I know
hopefully
Dad,
this is the first step.
Dad had both me and my sister in the stand, when we were 2 years old, and, we'd sit with them. Now, I'd have to look back and see, but I'll bet I was probably 8 years old when I shot my first deer. So, you texted the other day when we were scheduling this, and you said something about Colorado. You heading out there? Have you already been there?
Yeah, I head out there Monday.
Monday, okay.
Rifle hunt, first elk rifle. So I think I've shot 4 with my bow now, and this is with my dad, and he shot one with the bow. But this will be our first rifle elk hunt, so it's it'll be pretty special. It'll be cool to share it with him, and it's a pretty time out there, man. October, the leaves are changing, so it's like, I've been out there a few times in this time frame, and I love September for the bugles, but I don't think there's a prettier place to be than like the West when the leaves are starting to change.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't been any later than September. I've been during the summer and then September, but that's about it. I've never really seen the leaves in the West. But
well, you go to all those TAC events too, so you know what the West is like. But
yes, which I've only ever been to one Western TAC, and that was
really
Utah.
So that was the one that I saw you at.
Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, so what's the format of that rifle hunt? How's that gonna go? Guided, DIY?
Yeah, so we did a film, man, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago with my grandfather. When my grandma passed away, she asked me and my dad to take my grandfather on an elk hunt, which we did. So we scheduled this hunt, and we didn't have to be guided. That wasn't the requirement, but it's so hard with rifle to get a decent private land tag. And it's like, you can sneak onto some places for a decent cost, and as soon as you want to take the rifle, it just skyrockets. It becomes this big trophy hunt. So I found a guy that was recommended to me, Justin, out of Colorado, Cuddy Creek Outfitting. So we booked it with him, and he shot his elk, and we had an unbelievable hunt. It was a 50-minute film. And when we finished the hunt, my dad's like, "I'd like to come back here and do this someday." 4 or 5 years later, here we are. I thought at that point I would just go with him, but now I'm like, "Oh, I'd like to shoot one too." So this usually first rifle on this ranch, they take, I think it's 2-on-1. So that also too kind of guarantees that me and my dad will hunt together versus me filming him or having a guy film him. And then there's, some other subject there. So
yeah.
It's only a 5-day season, which is, that's always been the way it is out there. But, usually archery, I'm 5 or 7 day hunts for an episode. So it's a little quick, but.
Yeah, that ought to be a good time. I'd say I mean, what's the day to day like? So do you already have? Is he out there scouting now for where they're at or?
Yeah, I mean, he knows the ranch pretty well. I mean, he's guided on this one ranch for a long time. So, and if anybody that is a Western guy knows that the elk are very, how do I put this? They just move around a lot. Like they move in big radiuses versus a whitetail has that core area. A lot of times you're not going to have that with an elk. So they're starting to group up a little bit more now because, the rut's they're still going to be bugling a little bit, but it's kind of winding down. So, you could go to one side of the mountain or, a certain face or, valley, and there could be nothing there. And then the next day you go, then there's a herd of 60, and
Yeah.
we had those hunts with my grandfather. There was, one spot where we were it had snowed and there was this big herd of elk and there was so many that he couldn't pick out the bull. So we're like, well, we go back in the afternoon, we'll see one there. We went back in the afternoon and you would know there was an elk within miles, so it's just,
Hmm.
it's very opportunistic and it's, you just kind of play your favorite spots, but you just kind of go to each spot and there's a lot of glassing, and then once you think where they are, you try to, get there before daybreak, before they get back to bed. And, in the afternoons, you're kind of playing the waiting game, hoping they come out early and you can make a move on something. But they're not very vocal. So it's a lot of glassing versus the old listening.
Yep. Yeah. That's a hunt that I've not really been exposed to yet. I've not
Has your dad
gone
been
on
elk
a.
hunting? He's been elk hunting a little bit, right?
Dad is elk hunted every year for we're getting close on 20 years.
Okay.
He elk hunts with a bow. He bow hunts in September. He's been several different states out there, and I think that next season we're really going to start jumping around. The laws have been changing out there, as you know, and like they've been hunting the same spot for many years.
He's
And
mostly Idaho, right? I think.
yeah, Idaho, Wyoming. He's hunted Colorado some years ago, but yeah, they've they've gotten bumped around a little bit because of the laws, and um, I think that we've been buying preference points for the last several years. I've been buying them since I was 12, I think, which is the minimum age to get preference points. So I've got a few stacked up in several different states for
Mm-hmm.
whitetail, elk, muleys, just a few different species
Nice.
around, and that way, I think next hunting season we'll be changing it up a little bit. Maybe move away from elk, try out a new species. We've been looking
What
at
do you
some
got?
caribou stuff,
Caribou. Okay.
caribou, moose, muleys, of course, but.
Yeah.
I feel like muleys, it would be hard to go out west and hunt another deer because we've got plenty of deer here in Ohio.
Yeah, muleys are. Yeah, I got my butt kicked last year. I went to Utah, and it seems like if you're not there days before the opener, then it's really tough. Like I was there a week after it opened, and I would still think I could have turned over some bucks, and it was just like I struggled. And I think, if you're playing that early season mule deer game, it's like you have to kind of have your deer picked out. In that bachelor group. There's a lot of bachelor groups. So I'm like, surely there should be a shooter with these, and there's, at least to what I was considering a shooter. And I just think a lot of them get shot those first
Yeah,
couple days, unless you're really going in the holes, I guess. But yeah, man, that's cool. Caribou would be awesome. I assume
yeah.
you guys are doing all bow, 'cause I know you guys are big bow hunters, right?
Yes, likely all bow, I'd say. I think it'd be really cool to do like some sort of spot and stock thing. I really got into doing. I kind of dabbled a little bit with spot and stock a couple times during turkey season
Mm-hmm.
this spring, and I really like it. I think it's kind of fun. I think turkey's a really cool species because I mean you've got all the vocalization of them.
Mm-hmm.
You can also hunt them spot and stock like that. I think that's something I'm gonna really hit hard next year. I guess I did hunt all 5 weekends here in Ohio, or 6
Mm.
maybe, and then throughout the week a little bit.
And I know I always ask you this, but are you a sophomore or junior?
I am a sophomore now, so yep, I graduate class of 28, so that's where we're at. But
You're just waiting until you have that whole fall to go out and chase stuff, right?
yes, and actually, our school district, I'm pretty lucky. Lucky, I really like our school district. They let us out for fair break. So the county fair, Fairfield County Fair, is the last fair in the state of Ohio, and it's actually the week that we'll be filming this here, second week in October, something like that.
Mm.
And so I'm actually out this whole week for the county fair.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so and it's just because there's so many kids in our district that, show animals
No.
and stuff that, it'd be like half the classrooms would be empty, So
Yeah.
we get out for
Huh.
this week, and of course, I'm already tagged out, but I would have been spending a lot of time in the stand this week, and then I'll be getting the bow ready for fall wood duck season too. I do like.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. Was this your biggest whitetail?
This is, yes, by a long
Yeah.
shot. I have not shot a buck in the last 2 years at least, and I've passed up probably too many. But I'm glad. I'm glad that we're able to manage for some good deer on the property. We've
Yeah.
got a nice age class now. But yeah,
I
this is
know
my first decent buck. This is, and it
I
was a
know we
nice
were
one too.
talking with your dad at the PA TAC, and he was kind of griping like, yeah, you should just gotta start shooting deer, just start killing them, and and I was the same way. I know what stage you're at, and you've watched your dad be a trophy hunter, and now it's like you want to follow suit. Hats off to you for doing it, because that's like those deer. So I heard a quote the other day, and I don't know if it was a podcast or a video, but someone's like, you don't shoot a big buck every year. That's just not reasonable, especially if you're hunting that next age class. So it's like, but a lot of guys look outside and are like, oh, you shoot a buck every year, or a couple every year, and it's like, if you're really after a challenging animal, you're gonna have a year where you have to eat your tag.
Yeah.
I think once you kind of accept that, then it becomes more fun and more relaxed. You don't feel that pressure of like, showing up to school, by gun season with your tag filled.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I feel like I get on the podcast and I'm talking to people and I'm always talking about, managing for whitetails, managing for, habitat, all this stuff, and I just wouldn't feel right, taking a deer that's like, not mature. I talk
Yeah, yeah.
like
I totally, yeah. I mean, I know the people, I've seen the people you talk to, and I know most of them, and it's like, yeah, it's tough to be like, how do you kill those 6 or 7 year old deer? And then you go out the next weekend and shoot a 2 year old, and it's
yeah,
like, it's I think the company you keep, I think it's in business and in life as well as hunting, is like you're always trying to surround yourself with people that are better hunters than yourself to try to learn more. Just like those people are with people that are better than them. I started hunting and working with Greg Ritz, who's like great at managing whitetails. And I've been to his farm a few times and worked with his farm manager. And it's like, it changes your whole outlook on whitetail hunting, because for years I was very much like, I would have a lease in Kansas and I would shoot a buck and I'd be like, okay, I figured this property out. I want to go somewhere else now. I want to
hmm
redo for storyline. In their spots in Kansas, I know I could send somebody and feel confident that if they spend a week in the rut and play the wind, that they sit, you know, within 30 yards of this point that I give them or this pin, that they're going to be successful. But it may be a 130, it may be a 160. And then I talked to Greg, and he's like, because he owns a bunch of ground in Illinois. I forget how I put it. I said, do you ever get sick of hunting the same property every year? And he says, yeah, I did. He goes, but now I'm building it each year for a certain whitetail. And I was like,
hmm
oh, well, that's pretty cool. So each year, like, he's constructing his farm with food plots and, different things for a certain deer, and not so much just for, just copy and
yeah,
paste, which is, it's a lot of pressure to just, have like, this is your deer. And now it might change, it gets killed, EHD, you bump it, it goes in the neighbors forever, like all these things can happen. But it's like, I was much into the mindset of just like, all right, I go out there and I shoot the first Pope and young whitetail that comes by me, and I'd go to the next state, and I would feel in that glimpse of shooting, I'd feel great. But then I would be like, some of those hunts would be like 2 days, and I'm like, well, this isn't what I wanted, so it's
yeah.
understanding what you want is cool. And I think, is that a deer that you had history with, or you knew was around, I'm sure?
Yeah, we had I knew he was around since he started growing this spring. Come to find out the neighbors had known of him for the last couple years.
Mm,
We really don't run very many cameras and stuff like on the ground that we hunt. Like this was really the first year that we put out a camera, and still it's just one camera. But
really? That's funny
yeah.
because of, your background, or I guess how I met you and your dad was through the trail camera side of archery world.
Yeah. And we do run a lot of cameras. Mostly it's out on dad's leases and stuff. And like, I wake up every morning and look at, trail cam pictures from a dozen different cameras, and I do that, but like we only run one camera on our personal properties. But
I've always
yeah.
wondered too, like for a storyline, I'm like, well, it would be cool to just take a year off from cameras and just boots on the ground, and but it's like
Yeah.
I just can't bring myself to do it. I'm like, I want to know so badly what's out there and like set that goal, but it's intriguing, but it's
Yeah.
like
I'll do
it's
that
tough.
the day I switch to trad bow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's when
And
that'll happen.
and it's like there's always a next level, right? Like I say, no trail cameras, and you go, well, then you go trad bow, and then you can go, well, then you got to build your own bow. It's
Yeah.
like there's you can just never stop challenging yourself.
Yeah.
But I'm always too. It's like I'm shifting cameras constantly for certain deer. Just trying to like get a leg up and probably overdo it, but it's
That's all
fun.
part of the game.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of bows, what's your bow setup? Are you shooting the form?
I am, yeah. I'm shooting the Form 34. They came out with a 31 or 32. I should know this. I don't have it. Just because that 33, 34 has always been like my favorite axle to axle.
Yeah.
I always like, and I know we've talked about this before when someone's like, oh, but it shoots like a longer axle to axle. I'm like, yeah, well then why would you just get the longer axle to axle, and like, you're saving this much
Yeah.
like maneuverability. So I'm like, why wouldn't you go with the one that's is more forgiving? And that's just personal preference, but yeah. So I'm shooting a 34 at 80 pounds, and yeah, it's one of my favorite setups. I think the RVX, when they came out with that, was my favorite straight aluminum alloy full riser, and then when they came out with this, it's
I
the
think
same.
that the form was really a great move for Prime, because you're talking about the axle to axle, and with that carbon, those carbon tubes, that really allows them to adjust, axle to axle as fine as you want it. And
Yeah, I mean, and I know machining really well and like how things are built, the CNC machines and whatnot. And it's like when you go to the factory before at Prime, probably when you did that tour, it's
yeah,
like they're putting this whole, well, I gotta do it for the screen, this whole piece of aluminum, like this,
yeah,
into the machine, and it spits out the riser.
yeah,
So when they would do that, they'd have to run all the risers, then they'd have to do all the cams and
yes,
all these different pieces. Now they can just stockpile,
yeah,
the little piece of the riser, the top, the bottom, you know. I think the left right now is just the grip, so they can do left hands quicker. Like,
yep,
a lot
yeah,
of people
man,
don't realize that part of the archery world is the lead times and how quickly they can get it to dealers
yeah,
drives success
much
sometimes,
much better on a manufacturer standpoint,
Yeah.
a lot better. That's really awesome. That was a great innovation. I
Yeah.
think that they can go really far with that.
Yeah. And I should be getting the new one here soon, and I don't know anything about it, but usually this is about the time I get kind of the next version. So I'm excited to see what they do,
Yeah,
because I know that you've met the Grace family, or at least been around them a little bit, and they're always innovating, and it's always like you're always on the edge of your seat, like what's next,
yeah,
So
yeah.
what are you still PSC or Hoyt?
I'm all over the place. So
I know that. I just didn't know what's your.
so my hunting bow's Matthews. My
That's
indoor
new, isn't it?
bow, what is it?
That's new for you, right? I don't think I've ever seen you shooting a Matthews.
No, I've been shooting the Monster, old Matthews Monster. It's probably there's very few bows, like brand new bows, that I would shoot over this one. I really like this one. It's crazy fast. The
Yeah,
draw is very stiff, but that's just part
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
But yeah, I love the Monsters. 33 axle to axle, so that's
Okay.
kind of in the same ballpark as you.
Yep.
Dad shoots the Monster. We've got like 3 of them laying around, and it's a tried and true setup, I guess, for us. But
Is that kind of the time? And I don't know the Matthews stuff as well as Prime. Is that the time they kind of switched from the solo cam? It was one of the
this would have
first
been,
models.
yeah, this would have been a few years after that. I really don't know the years on it. Probably would have been somewhere between 12 and 15 years ago. So
So it had
it's
to
a,
be Yeah, it had to be right around that time,
Yeah.
I would
So
think.
it's
Like, I don't think it was the first, but I'm sure it was one of the first couple.
yeah, and like I said, they're crazy fast. It's when they first came out with the AVS technology, if you're
Mm,
familiar with that.
yep,
I think
yep,
they still use that in their cams. But
yeah.
yeah, so it's a great bow. And then I shoot indoor, and probably a lot more of my target this next year is going to be with the Hoyt. And then I've still got the old PSE. I'll probably set that up for like indoor 3D throughout the winter, just kind of as a backup bow, just to set up to play around with, and we'll be using that. So I'm across 3 different brands. I
You
mean,
just haven't got Prime yet, which is crazy because
I know it's
I've been
insane. I
trying to
don't know.
convince you so hard.
And yeah, I don't know why I haven't gotten a Prime yet. That's one of the few bows that I would hunt with over the MR7, the
Well,
Matthews.
and I think too, like your background's in Target, and Prime used to be a bigger player in the Target game, and they've really, I don't know that they have the last couple models have been beyond 34, so I think it's kind of, but that might change, and I think, yeah, I mean, I think too, you're you know an archery nerd for lack of better terms, and I think you understand technology and stuff. So it's like, I'm sure you're just like me that when something new comes out, you want to try it and test it, like I'm sure you've shot the form and I'm sure you've shot pretty much every manufacturer out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's definitely one I'd get, and I really like how Prime focuses on, accuracy, stability, all that stuff. I really do like what they've got going for hunting bows.
yeah, well, cool. Well, maybe we'll get you in one at some point, and then you could help me tune mine because I know, I'm always asking you questions when I have like,
Yeah,
you're kind of one of my, I have like a 3 or 4 people that I'll go to, like, hey, what could this be? Because I'm new to setting up bows, and you know how it is. It's like it's easy all the way until something happens that you just can't figure out, and then it's like
yeah,
that's when those archery guys really come into play. But you can, like when things are good and you have like a rest that's integrated with the bow, so you know where your center shot is, like all these, now it's pretty easy, and your knots and all these things, and it can be really easy. And then you have something happen where it's beyond just cam timing or something like that. And then you're
yeah,
like, well, now what could it be? And
yeah.
that's when it's like, that's when
For
people like you really excel, I think.
Yeah, for me, tuning's like, I mean, it's like second nature for me almost. I've been tuning
Yeah.
bows since I started shooting. Like, I've always sighted in my own bows and everything like that. It definitely went up a lot when I started shooting target. I learned all my different knots. I've came up with my own knots for certain things, and I mean, it's like second nature. I do it all the time, so it's pretty easy. When the tractor breaks, I've got a pretty basic understanding of how things work, and I can follow the manual and tear it apart.
Yeah.
But when it comes to be one of those problems that's like outside of just cam timing or move the rest, like in automotive terms, I'm confuzzled. I need to
Yeah.
I need to find somebody to
What do
help
you
me.
think?
But
What do you think people overlook most with like tuning bows? Like, what do you think is the biggest mistake you see constantly made?
I would say, as far as bow hunting goes, probably not getting your broadheads to fly great.
Mm,
I put a ton of effort into making sure my broadheads fly straight. Obviously, it's not as important with mechanical. That's the trade-off. Fixed blade mechanical. I like fixed blades because they're a little bit more efficient, but it also means that there's a lot more work that you got to put in. There's a place for mechanicals, and that is if you don't want to spend the time it takes to tune a fixed blade, that's where you need to go mechanical mechanical. But I'd say moving the rest, fine tuning all that stuff is super important. Even with mechanicals because they still catch a little bit of wind. But
yeah.
yeah, I'd say tuning that for a basic hunting setup. I really don't put that much effort into tuning, believe
Yeah.
it or not. I put so much more into the target stuff. For me, a hunting bow is just like I don't know. It's not. It's
It
not.
can be. It can be.
Yeah, it's not super important. I really just throw it together and get a good paper tune. Make sure my broadheads are flying straight, and then I'm good to go. As long as them broadheads are flying, then I'm good.
Have you ever had? Not that I'm trying to be the host of the podcast. I have a couple questions. Have you ever had like trouble paper tuning, but downrange it looks good? Like I've had instances when I first started doing it where I was like, not getting a great tear, and then you'd watch the arrow fly at 30, 40, 50, and you're like, but it looks great.
Yeah, absolutely. So my kind of biggest breakthrough in tuning happened this summer, probably July, when I was getting ready for the Buckeye Classic big tournament in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I got some Easton X10s, and they were the Pro Tours, so that's like the tapered shaft and, the aluminum carbon hybrid, best target error out there, and I could not get them to tune at all. Like, it was terrible. It
Through
was
paper, you're saying
through
that was where
paper.
you were
Yes, it
struggling.
was
Yeah.
it was giving me terrible tears, and I was moving my cams all the way to one side, moving it back to the other direction, moving my rest, and I could not get anything to tune. I was checking my timing. I was throwing the cams way out of time, trying to get it to work, and finally I'm like, something's not going on here. So I started calling around, like you say, and I was calling guys that know way more about tuning than I do. And,
Mm-hmm.
I got talking to Cody at Easton, actually, and he's like, oh, for X10s, that's normal. There's a lot of guys out there that don't shoot them with a good paper tune. Now, some guys can get them to tune just fine. I don't know what the difference is, but my setup, they were not paper tuning. But then I go outside and I shoot some groups with it, and it's just like, boom, tiny
Hmm.
little groups. But I don't know.
Are
Some
they
stuff's
are they light? You think like they just have a lot of flex off the bow or something, or no
my
idea?
guess would be that it has something to do with the tapered shaft, right? So the front end of it is skinnier than the back end of the shaft, and it's like smaller diameter than 166 even. So I assume that has something to do with it. I'm not an expert though, so I really couldn't tell you. But yeah, I
You
mean,
you are an expert in most regards, but maybe just not that. Because to me, I'm
yeah,
like, I've introduced you to people before. And I'm like, tell them how you built this site and stuff like that. But it's funny that you know you have people beyond you that you call, and it's going right. For you, it's mostly right to the manufacturer. But
yeah.
that's so when you were shooting down range, they were flying fine.
Oh yeah, yeah. I once I knew what I was doing, once I found out that paper tune doesn't really work with them that well, yeah, I got them tuned up, and I mean they're flying great. But yeah, I think that probably the biggest thing I see guys do is shoot arrows that are not the right spine. So make sure you're checking your spine charts. I use a program called Archer's Advantage. It's like the computer thing. Plug it in. It seems to be pretty accurate for a lot of things. Um, I mean, as long as you're close, it's always better to be on the stiffer side than the weaker side.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I always shoot for optimal according to the
mm,
spine charts and Archer's Advantage. But
yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at on arrow setup.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I've always said like, and I've always told your dad, I was like, if I ever start an archery shop, I'm gonna hire Mason to come, and I probably can't afford him, but that would be like, that'd be fun for me, because I don't think I'll ever get tired of tinkering. Like I could take 2 months off, and I start setting up a bow, and I'm just immediately like back, to like learning the little things, like figuring it out, and it's just like it's such a fun process, and I love just having all the gear, everything brand new, opening it up and starting from scratch.
But yeah,
I don't get quite the enjoyment when it's like just putting a new sight on or switching something up. Like I love getting the new bow and just starting from square one. Like
yeah,
that's such a fun it's such a fun, time for me.
yeah. I mean, for me, I've shot the same two bows, like the exact same setup for the last 2-3 years, and then I just got this new Hoyt target bow, and it was like kid in the candy store. Like setting that thing up, I put a new sight on it, new
Yeah.
strings, all the stuff, and switching just from one model bow to the next is a big enough change, and then going from PSE to Hoyt,
Yeah.
that was totally different setups. And honestly, it wasn't as hard to get it tuned in as I thought it would be. But yeah, it's always fun getting that new equipment in and tinkering around with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. And it's always a weird time because I usually get the new one in September or like middle to late October. And it's always like, no matter when you get it, it's right when you need it. It's
Yeah.
like you wish you had a week before. So you're always like, I wish I had days, but I'm like, I'm going to hunt with it tonight. It's
Yep.
like, it'll be fine, and I shot a deer one year, like the day after I got it. I set it up and I was like, love this thing. And I shot a doe, or I don't know, but it was like, you're always like internally trying to be the first one to shoot one with the new bow.
Yeah.
It's like kind of like it means nothing and nobody cares or knows, but it's just like between, like
Yeah.
the group of guys that shoot the prime, it's kind of like that internal thing. Like, I already got one, it's like I got to
Yep.
doe first or whatever, so it's, but it's fun, man. I think, yeah, one of these days I'll get out to Lancaster, and I'd love to see the shop you guys got going. Did you ever get your, 1 arrow a day challenge? I saw you were trying to get fully in the bullseye or something in the X.
Yes.
Or what was it?
Hole in one is what I was calling it. I was
Okay.
kind of on a golf kick there for the end of the summer. I went and played 2 rounds, but
Oh, okay.
I always go neck deep in everything I do. So I
Yeah.
got big into golf, and then I'm like, oh, well, I'll make a video, hole in one with a bow and arrow. And just basically inside out of the X ring on a Vegas face,
Okay.
which you've basically, if you miss more than 1/8 of an inch in either direction,
You're out.
it's gonna be out. So it was a pretty tight shot, and I actually finished the series in 9 days, which was a lot quicker than I thought I would. But
one shot a day, right?
Yeah, 1 shot a day.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a fun little series. I think people like the series content, like you remembered it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit memorable. I think I'm gonna continue to do that. I think people really like it. The other thing I started doing when I shot my buck, I posted just a 20-minute podcast episode, and it's called the Buck Breakdown. I basically went through hit all the main points, the details of how I shot the buck, history, stuff like that. And people really enjoyed that episode too. So I'm looking to do some more of those. And maybe if you shoot a buck, or other people I know shoot a buck the day
What's the
after, or a
story?
couple days after, I'd like to have them on for just a quick episode and hear the story.
Yeah.
But that'd be
like
pretty
that.
fun. So,
Yeah, that's catchy too, and it's I'm sure you've had the same. Sometimes it's super complicated, and it looks like in your mind it looks like a crime scene where you have these different points going this way, and other times you're just it's not like that, but it's really cool when you have the crazy brain. You think you're trying to master this animal, and it works out. If it's really rewarding.
yeah. And
But yeah, man. Hopefully I shoot one in a while. We can do that. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I know. I was editing a podcast episode that I filmed a couple of days before I shot that buck, and I was talking about in the episode. I'm like, hopefully by the time this episode posts, I've already shot a buck. I've been watching one, and I was talking about that, and I guess I called the shot, which is pretty hard to do, but yeah, I'm glad I'm done hunting though. At least buck hunting. I'm still gonna doe hunt and all that, but the big push for me is pretty much over, other than ducks in the next couple weeks, but I'll be able to focus on target stuff more.
Yeah.
One thing that I did kind of, I won't say mess up on, but I just didn't do right, was film my hunt. I've got the camera equipment I have consists of an iPhone and a gimbal sometimes. So in the tree stand, stuck my trimble, down in the a pouch of my backpack, and had it positioned, and then the camera of my phone was pointing down. To hit record, you had to reach up behind your head and hit the button, and it was a lot better than nothing, but it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
In the actual situation, when the buck come in, I couldn't reach up to hit the camera or something. It was a weird situation. But what would you recommend I get to be able to just film the shot, just get a little something, video footage, maybe with my phone? Maybe I need to buy a little camera. What do you recommend?
Well, every once in a while someone's comes to me and they're like, hey, I want to start filming my hunts. What do I get? And I'm like, it's such a loaded question, because it's there's budget is a huge issue, and it's if what you're doing in the simple terms can work. The one thing I'll say is, a gimbal's designed for movement, to keep movement steady. So it's for you to be bringing the gimbal and mounting in your pack is kind of counterproductive, but there are those 4th arrow mounts that you can mount behind you and stuff like that, and just kind of capture that, that wide range look. Whether it's a 360 camera, which is super cool because that gives you such a good field of view. Actually, I just got one that I haven't tried yet, but it's this is the new DJI 360, and I'm gonna do a review on it with Bedford camera. basically what the 360 is like, when you're instead of just 4K, you have such a big resolution that you can shift the camera to see, after you film it.
Yeah.
So that's a cool option for the guys that's not going to move around. But having just that cheap fourth arrow arm, that elite arm, even if you just mount your cell phone to it, is super, super simple. And it's one of those things where it's like, I always tell people, get what you can, right? Like
Yeah.
if you want it to see your shot placement, that's super effective. If you want it to show your girlfriend, your wife when you go home, if you want it to show content, like you can get as much out of it as you want. It just depends on how far you want to take it. That's one of the things I've joked around, and as far as regret is that, because I went the cinematic route and I was like, oh, I got obsessed with like it being as pretty as it can be and telling
Yeah.
these cinematic stories. Is like, I can no longer just go out and film myself because it's not cinematic, and I don't solo film. I have a camera guy with me, and it's not a simple setup. It's an elaborate setup. So it's
Yeah.
like, but when I was first starting out, I was talking with Tim Burnett, Solo Hunter, who I don't think he has a show anymore, but he still has a good platform. And, that was the big joke. He's like, it's great. People don't care if I shoot anything, if I get the shot on film. He's like, and I don't have a camera guy, I just solo film everything. He's like, so it's like, I got like no pressure. He's like, I go out elk hunting and never see a thing. And they're like, oh, great episode. It was real.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I go out 5 days with a camera guy. And if I don't have an elk down or having a shot encounter, they're like, what a waste of time and money and camera guys and equipment, So I always say like, just figure out what what your end goal is. And, there's always a next step, like, I'm by no means at the top of where I can be in quality of camera, lenses. I can always go one step further. So if it's iPhone right now, which is great, easy content, easy to post, like it's super quick for you, then that's it. But if you get a little triple arm from Fourth Arrow and stuff like that, that allows you to, move the camera in front of you. Because if you have it like by your hip to your right side, it's really productive for shooting because you're not having to do the extra movement. Do you shoot a hinge or a thumb button? I take it.
I
when
shoot
you
a
hunt?
index.
Okay, so even so, it's not like it's a huge deal. But I always when you had a thumb and you had the your bow up and you had your hand here, you could have that release hanging and go down and move your camera and get it to where it needs to go on the right side, and then and then you're fine to go ahead and shoot. So the tough thing with the iPhone, like you said, is you're reaching behind you. It's extra movement.
Yeah.
It's, if it's facing you, that's cool because you can see it. But when it gets to low light, now you have a light source behind you, which is not good. So it's like, there's all these little things that you have to think about. And I've seen guys have like 6 GoPros and they just like, wrist record it. And it's like, all these different cameras light up, which is cool. But, just like anything else, the more cameras I have, this one runs out of battery, this one's dead, there's things that happen. So
yeah it can get a little finicky.
I
think for me, considering like I had a GoPro for a while, took it to Canada on a canoe trip, it came off the clip, fell on a rock, shattered, it's totaled. And
totaled. It's like it's a Chrysler or something.
Yeah, it's totaled. And so that I literally took it on one trip and it was done. So and I'm thinking, 360 camera, that would be really cool for a lot of the stuff I do. I feel like I can get a lot of good angles out of that. But I also like, I'm with an iPhone. I'm a pretty mean like photographer with an iPhone. Obviously not near to your level, but I feel like I'm a lot better than average on taking videos and photos and stuff. And I'm looking like, should I get a video camera that can take a decent photo? Like for me, I'm not near to the level with cameras as you are. Like you've got, these crazy, powerful cameras. I literally just need a basic camera that is a little bit better than an iPhone.
I mean, so that's a good question, and you brought up a good point. Is like I see a lot of guys that have that same thing, like, oh, I want to take photos, but video is important, and then they spend a couple $1,000 to $2,000 on a camcorder. Well, the DSLRs now, which is has an interchangeable lens, is such a good tool to start with because that's ultimately what the pros use, and that's ultimately what you'll end with if you ever get somewhat addicted to it. Like the camcorder thing is, once you get past that entry level camcorder, you'll probably go to a DSLR. So the DSLRs aren't crazy hard to use, and they take good photos, and I think you get a way better bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like if you can get a DSLR with a 24-70 style lens, like that's fine for bow hunting. Is it perfect? No. It's like you ideally want a bigger lens, but I shot a doe, which I posted on Instagram. I don't know if you saw it. I just posted the shot, and that was shot with a 24-70 because we didn't have the lens set up yet of our kill lens, and it was perfectly fine at 40 yards.
Yeah.
You see all you need to see, and and it's a smaller form camera. You can run it in auto settings. So to me, that's what I would get, because once you learn that and you want to upgrade, it's much easier instead of going from a camcorder of learning how to run that, then switching to a whole different platform. It'd be equivalent to like, having a crossbow and finally figuring it out and then being like, all right, now I got to learn a compound. It's just like, it's a whole different animal. Things are still relative, but it's not ideal.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do. And, there's $800 to $6,000, so it's like, there's many upgrades you can make. And if I was to tell somebody right now to start filming, I would say, yeah, go get a cheap Canon DSLR with a 24-70 or some type of lens like that, and just start filming and taking pictures. You could set that up in your garage and shoot your stuff and have it on a tripod behind you, and it's gonna look great.
That's good to know. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, when's the next episode of Art of Wild coming out?
What is today? Friday? Well, when people listen to it, it could be any day, but every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, it airs on Sportsman's Channel. I will be launching YouTube. I don't know when. I wouldn't expect it by the time this podcast airs, but if you don't listen to the podcast for a couple months, I may be on YouTube by then, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then where can we find you? Instagram, you're on Instagram, I've seen.
Instagram, let me look it up. It's Art of Wild _TV, I think.
Yeah. You've gotten a lot of followers here in the last few months since you started that page.
Yeah, dude, honestly, TikTok's been my big thing.
Really?
I love, I just did a TikTok with the doe kill, and it got like 30,000 in one day, and guys arguing about shot placement, and it was, it's fun to just sit back and watch people argue of like, that's not perfect, that's perfect, and so TikTok's, I'm starting to like TikTok, not for the trends, just because it's like, there's a lot of archers on there, especially the tack guys. So yeah, TikTok, same thing. I think, let me look it up. I think it's Art of Wild.
I haven't done TikTok yet. I don't know if I will or not, but I do Instagram, Facebook, and I've got so much content that I need to transfer from Instagram, Facebook over to YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I think YouTube's, I just haven't had the time I got the content. I've got plenty of content. I'm just, got to play catch up with the episodes first. That's the baby, if you will. Yeah. And then, I'll start doing the YouTube thing. And I'm excited too, because, like I said, for the reasons of people can give you criticism right away, or they can praise you right away.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, but it's like, it's instant, and that's, I think, such an important thing with content these days.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate the episode, Nick. I'm glad you came on. We learned a lot of good stuff. We need to do it again.
Yeah, I hope so, man. Hopefully we'll do that buck breakdown.
Yeah.
Maybe like 2 weeks, say like before Halloween, we'll be doing a buck breakdown, hopefully. If not, then I'll be super stressed.
Buck breakdowns, bull breakdowns. We can do bow breakdowns. I mean, there's a bunch of B words
well, let me ask you, is launch one archery only?
No.
Okay.
It can definitely be rifle.
It can be either. Because, I mean, obviously, I don't want to sound like I'm a gun hunter by any means. I'm a bow hunter at heart, but,
Yeah.
So that's good that we have options then. So.
Well, I appreciate it, Nick.
Nick.
I appreciate it, Nick. Glad you came on for the episode today. This will drop here pretty soon. I'll let you know. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode.